PwC says the demand for and supply shocks from the COVID-19 outbreak could keep Nigeria's headline inflation higher for longer. They also note that an elevated base effect and waning household income would influence the outlook for inflation for the rest of the year, barring a second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. For more on this conversation, the chief economist and partner of PwC Nigeria, Andrew Nevin, now joins me from Lagos. Andrew, always a pleasure to have you join CNBC Africa for our conversations. Now we are seeing a 26-month high due to the supply shocks and COVID price, I'll just take that again. We're seeing 26-month high due to supply shocks to commodity prices and, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, according to details of your report. What concerns a priority for you as far as this report is concerned?
Well, I mean, we put out this report in response to the official inflation numbers, and of course, the official inflation numbers have gone up. But we've consistently said that you need to look behind the official numbers. I mean, the reality is that over half of the population of Nigerians spends at least 60% of their income on food. So, and we've seen food inflation increase. Food prices are increasing faster than those headline inflation numbers. So our real concern is to make sure that we have the security of the food supply chain and we're able to get food to the bottom of the pyramid. And this is the most urgent issue. We said this very clearly to the government in March. I think the country has done a relatively good job, but there needs to be a focus on making sure the food supply works, that the planting season that comes up is effective, is not affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. We simply need food in Nigeria. So that's our biggest concern.
So we see from your report, like you mentioned earlier, food inflation consistently holding steady over non-food inflation. That clearly talks about the fact that demand for food is more prioritized over others given current realities. But what essentially do these figures tell us?
Well, I mean, as I said, we like to go behind these figures. And I think, one of the challenges for the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, of course, is how to collect these figures in the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. They're obviously under pressure fiscally. It's not easy to physically gather this data anymore. So we're not really sure that the official statistics actually adequately capture what's happening in food markets. I mean, if you look at what we really need to get is what's happening for the price of the key commodities in individual places. I mean, it doesn't matter to someone in Sokoto or someone in Cross River what the food price is in Edo State. What matters is the food price in their state. And I think what we're lacking right now is really a granular look at what's happening to the food security situation and the food price situation everywhere in the country. So I don't think we're getting adequate information. This is not the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics' fault. They're operating under very difficult conditions. But that to me would be the number one priority. I can say, talking to people in the industry, they're not concerned about let's call it famine conditions or a collapse of the next cycle, but they do believe there's real pressure on getting the quantity of food grown over the next planting cycle in Nigeria, which is going to put further food price pressure, which is going to cause further poverty and hunger in the country. So those are all things that should be right at the top of the priority list for the federal government and for the state governments, and indeed for everyone in Nigeria.
And what will elevated base effects and leaner household income mean for inflationary pressure in the second half of the year?
Well, I mean, base effect just means that what happened last year eventually kind of rolls away. But I mean, at a very simple level, if the inflation pressure depends on the amount of money that we have and the amount of goods that we have. From elementary economics right now. In terms of the amount of money in the economy, I mean, we're already challenged because we have such big budget deficits. The federal government is financing them effectively by printing money, which increases the quantity of naira. At the same time, we're having pressure on the supply of food that's given, so there's less food supply. So the net result of that is there's going to likely to be continued food pressure inflation. The food prices for the staples are going to continue to go up. I mean, I'm sure all aware, people I talked about the increase in the market price, something that was 10,000, 17,000, something that was 15,000, 25,000. And that we don't see any reason right now to think that pressure is going to abate right now. So it is a real concern for the country.
So So one of the exciting areas, one of the several exciting areas for me in this report is that you also went ahead to explore the approaches to putting a lid on the consistent upward flexible commodity prices. I'd like you to share some details into that as we wrap this conversation.
Well, I mean, I think that this is also related to the exchange rate commodity. We would like to see more flexibility and in the exchange rate and in the commodity prices. We think the market forces, are going to work in Nigeria given the way the population behaves. I mean, particularly we've seen in the last week or so some announcements from the CBN, and there's a little lack of clarity in the market right now. But clearly, we're moving towards whether it's in commodity prices or exchange rate or even in the fuel market determined forces. And the reason for this is simple: is because with the COVID-19 economic crisis, with the collapse in oil prices, the federal government is not in a position to dictate market prices anymore. So they're releasing these things that were previously attempted to be controlled by the federal government and by fiat are essentially becoming market driven. And we're going to see that, I think, in every market as the economic impacts of COVID-19 roll through Nigeria.